Hello, everybody. Welcome to College Aid Pro office hours. I'll give everybody a second to come in, and we'll probably have people coming and going, which is totally fine. So I am Peg Keogh, if you don't know me. I'm the Director of Education at College Aid Pro. Been doing this work with parents and families for a long time. And before we get started, I'm just going to share my screen really quickly here and put up just our disclaimer. You know, we have to have our disclaimer. I'm not going to read it to you, but basically what it says is we can't guarantee admission into college. Obviously, we can't guarantee what you're going to get from the college as far as financial aid. We have a great tool to help you project that, but we can't guarantee it. And then also, I'm going to do my best to answer your questions. If your question is very specific to your family and I can't answer it without having more information, which there are a lot of questions like that, that means you're going to have to book an hour with one of our experts. But we are not giving tax, legal, or investment advice, and you definitely should seek those professionals. I have been a financial planner, actually still am, but that's not the hat I'm wearing right now, so I'm not going to give investment advice, and we're definitely not giving legal advice. And I know my way around a tax return and can answer a lot of questions, but I'm not going to give tax advice. So that's the legal stuff. So we got that out of the way. So basically, this is a forum for you guys to ask questions. So put them in the Q&A versus the chat, and then I will do my best to get through as many of these as I can. I do have a hard stop at the top of the hour, so 5 o'clock my time, 8 o'clock if you're on the East Coast. So let me dive in here. Is it too late to reach out to secure your services after receiving acceptance letters and merit scholarship offers, or can you help before that? We can help throughout the whole process. So if you have a sophomore in high school, you can start digging in and we can help. If you have a senior in high school, we can help. And then once you're the whole journey, we're going to show up during the whole journey that you're on. So basically, there's building a college list, and our whole thing is having affordability in mind. So, academic, personal, and financial fit, right? Our space is financial fit, and we partner with a lot of people that do the other two pieces really well. So we can help in that so that you understand financial aid, where you fit. But then once your child applies, then when you're in the MyCap software, and I'll put a link in there, there's a free version of the software. Everybody should get in there, because when you get in there, I'll just do a quick screen share here just to show you. This is your dashboard when you're in here, and you got all your EFCs. It's free to put in 3 schools, see your EFCs. Not everything's free. And then you can upgrade to the full platform, but everything you see here, and understanding that the net cost and how much need-based aid you might get, and seeing all the merit scholarships that schools have, that's all part of the free version. So I really, really recommend that you go in and set up your free account for sure. And then once you get in our community, which if you're here and you've registered for office hours, you're in it, you will also get all of our email invites. We have a newsletter. All of that stuff's free. It's great content. And the webinars here, I'm going to go in and paste the MyCap in the chat so you can grab it. Okay, so I just put the link to MyCap in the chat. You go there, you can get started for free, and you're off to the races. But definitely get in our community, because like I just shot a line by line of the 2 new forms that I'm going to upload into the software. And we're doing line by line webinars starting next week. So there's just a lot of great support out there through the whole process. We did to this person, to your question, We do appeals webinars. We work with people one-on-one around appeals, starting in December all the way through April until kids make decisions. So absolutely, it's not too late. We even have people come to us that have a child in school that's in college and they don't understand their packages. So definitely not too late. Okay. Hello, my name is Maria. I'm a MyCap member. Awesome. My son has been chosen for the FAFSA verification. Do the colleges send verification forms after he is accepted? So what the colleges do, once you so what verification is, after you submit the FAFSA, a certain number of students are verified, and it just depends on the state, but they reach out, the college reaches out and says, hey, send a tax transcript. So I always recommend that everybody just just request a tax transcript online. Make sure you're on an IRS website. Just do that proactively, because if you get verified, then that's usually good enough to send them, because that's official documentation of your tax return. But you're asking, do the colleges verification forms? They'll typically send something that says, if you're being verified, they're going to reach out to you and they're going to tell you what the process is to follow. I've seen forms be sent where the parent has to fill it out, but the college will reach out to you on that. So I'm surprised that because there really aren't any deadlines yet. So you want to make sure your son really was verified, because if you haven't sent the FAFSA in yet, then you wouldn't be verified. So that happens after you submit the FAFSA. And then the CSS profile schools, just so everybody knows, those schools actually, they're going to reach out to you, or a third party called IDOC will reach out to you, and you're going to have to submit all your tax returns and W-2s. That's for every student. Verification on the FAFSA is not necessarily every student. So I had twins, so I had 8 times I submitted the FAFSA, and I guess I was just lucky, never got verified. So you're not guaranteed to be verified. Do the asset figures on the CSS and FAFSA need to match? We have completed the FAFSA, but not the CSS. So if we pull figures the day we send, they won't match. No, don't worry about that. If you do it the same day and they match, that's fine. If you do it 2 weeks apart, they're not going to match, and that's okay. I would kind of, the market, I don't know what the market, I didn't look to see what the market did today, but if you have a sizable stock portfolio with all the, I'm looking at my phone right now. Oh, the market was up today. You might want to pick a day when the market was down, you know, especially lately, because there could be a bad week. For sure. But yeah, they don't have to perfectly match. And remember, no retirement accounts, only your non-retirement accounts on the financial aid forms. Okay. Do we have to list life insurance policies on the CSS? So if you've been in the CSS, there's no question that asks if you have cash value life insurance on the form. I have seen, it's been a few years, but I have seen a supplemental question maybe 5 years ago that asked that. So basically, when you're done with the CSS, you've listed all the schools. There's a whole bank of supplemental questions that the colleges can pick from, and like Notre Dame can say, I want to ask question 1 and question 21. And so it'll, right after the special circumstances section, it'll say supplemental questions, and you'll see it'll be like 3 questions and it'll say Notre Dame there. So I saw that once where they asked, do you have cash value life insurance and what's the value? Remember, and if you watch our line by line, or you join one of our webinars, which I strongly recommend, we have a webinar. I should have had that link available for you guys. We have a webinar coming up next week. That's our line by line. I believe it's on the 27th of October, but you should be getting an invite. Matt and I will go through these forms. So with the CSS profile, if the question is not required, it doesn't say required next to it, you don't need to answer it. The colleges, like I said earlier, they're going to request your tax returns, and they can always ask questions. If it's not required, when it comes to the financial aid forms, you want to, 1, be honest, and 2, less is more. So answer what they're requiring you to answer. The rest of it, leave it blank if they don't require it. doesn't matter the order of schools listed. And on I'm assuming you're talking about the FAFSA, Lori. It does not, as far as the school seeing the list and seeing where they're ordered, because the colleges can't see the other schools that you submit the FAFSA to, but the order can matter to certain states. So you mentioned the UC system. You should check with the state of California and make sure, because I know I'm in Washington, and I know if you're eligible for state aid, they say, you know, list us first, your top choice. So I'll tell people, you know, if you really want to go there and list that first in the list there, but not as far as the colleges being able to see and thinking, oh, you put me as number 10. You don't really want to go here. They don't have that visibility. They used to years ago, but they took it away, which I think was a good move. It was really none of their business. So, all right, I've seen the advice to buy a new car now rather than later as a means of getting excess cash off the books. Would a purchase of gold or silver be something that would escape the prying eyes of the FAFSA? Technically, gold and silver are a commodity, so it's a liquid asset, right? It can be sold for whatever it's trading at by the ounce at that time. So technically, it's not really a place to hide it. Does everybody who has gold bullion put it down? I don't know. I'm here to tell you what the rules are. If you buy a car, cars are not included. I've seen supplemental questions that say, what kind of cars do you drive? It's not required. Don't answer it. But so if I tell people all the time, like if you need to buy a new car, it's just yours is on its last legs. You're going to do a kitchen remodel, anything like that. If you're sitting on a sizable amount of money in a savings account or money you just know you're going to spend, might want to spend it before you submit the forms. It totally depends on your family though. Like if you have a very high income and your EFCs are high no matter what, then it doesn't really matter what your assets are, right? But if there's a chance that you could get need-based aid, then spending some of the money that's just sitting there, the non-retirement money that's maybe in savings or is earmarked for something, you could spend it. So you're not having to claim it on the forms. Hi, just wondering how to estimate the value of my home. Do I say the value is the market value minus amount owed minus closing costs, etc.? So great question, Jed. I am going to put a link in the chat. And I'm going to give, this is a federal housing calculator. And no guarantees that this will be a lower value for you. But for some people, depending on the part of the country and different things, it can be. So I just put that in the chat for everybody. So if you click on that, that'll just open another link and you can bookmark it for later. So what you want to do here is you want to be honest, like I said before, but you want to find the lowest defensible value for your home. So if a home sold down the street for $3 million, but they just gutted the house and redid everything and it's beautiful and your house hasn't been updated in a while, obviously if Zillow says your house is going to sell for that, that's not accurate, right? So usually Zillow's high, but what you want to do is get the lowest defensible quick sale value for your home. And then you can take off about 15 or 20%. So that's called the IRS quick sale value. And it's because of what you're saying. We all know when you sell a house, you don't get all of the proceeds, right? So you do take out, you do that lowest value, take off the 15 or 20%, then you take your liabilities away. So if you've got a mortgage, if you've got a HELOC, all of that should come off. On the CSS profile, what they do is they ask you the questions that are on that housing calculator that I just pasted into chat. So they ask you when you bought your home, how much you paid for it, what the value is now. There's one other question, I think. And if you get a value for your house there that's pretty low, print a PDF and save that, right? Because that's an appeal point down the road. If you've got CSS profile schools, if your kids have applied to them and you're not happy with your package, you can get into conversations with them about, well, how did you value my home? And that's an appeal point. And that, as I said earlier, that's something that we help families do. You can book an hour with one of our experts. We're happy to help you. on the CSS profile, when they ask if you were a dislocated worker, is that for 2021 or current? You got to look at that. It should be current, because if you're a dislocated worker in 2021, but you're not now, it doesn't really matter. And definitely click on that little question mark, because that'll give you more details. Because if you are a dislocated worker, definitely click that, because that's going to put you in some categories to get certain aid. So you want to definitely click that. But read the explanation, because you might think you're a dislocated worker when it doesn't fall under the definition. Do we need to include a state school to be eligible for Illinois state aid, even though we probably won't be applying? Well, I'm not intimately familiar with Illinois state aid. I'm in the state of Washington. So to get Washington state aid, for a student to get that, they have to be applying to a school in Washington. They can apply to schools in California and Iowa and all over the place, but Washington's only going to give out their aid if they're at a Washington state school. So I would think other states are the same, but I don't know that for sure. So in Illinois, if your child has to go to a college, public or private, that's what it is in Washington. It can be public or private in the state of Washington, they're eligible for state aid, then that's great. They can get the state aid. But if they go out of state, they've lost that perk. So you have to check if you can't get Illinois state aid by going to a school in Indiana, then you shouldn't list a school that your child is absolutely not going to go to. Okay. My kids have Medicaid. Do you suggest us to submit assets in FAFSA? What's the financial aid offer? There's a bunch of questions on the FAFSA, and if you click those, usually that makes you eligible for what's called the simplified needs test. This is only for the FAFSA, not the CSS profile. And then you are not required to submit your non-retirement assets. Although I will say some states, it still pops up there. But like the state of Washington, I helped a family several years ago, and the question still popped up, which kind of, it's like, why are those popping up? But I checked with the state, and it's like, if you fall under the simplified needs test, then you don't have to declare assets. Your non-retirement assets, but you have to be in one of those categories. You have to check one of those boxes on the FAFSA. What's the financial aid offer with EA versus, so what's the financial aid offer with early action versus regular decision for Northeastern Michigan, BC, BU, and Tufts? So first of all, I can't guarantee, and I'm assuming the person, that they all have EA, because not every school has early action, allows you to apply early action. The financial aid offer is going to totally depend on your family. There could be a combination of need-based aid and merit. I'll tell you that Boston College and Tufts do not have any merit aid. So, or Boston College is very, very, very little, and Tufts does not. So if you don't have need-based aid eligibility, doesn't matter if you apply EA or regular decision, you're not going to get any merit aid. Michigan is one of these schools. It's a public school, but they meet 100% of need, and they don't give much merit to out-of-state kids. So that question, it can't be, you can't answer that question without looking at your specific situation. If you're in MyCap's going to give you projections. If you've adequately filled in your profile, you have all your information in there and it's accurate, you should get some good projections for the schools in there. I will say for early action, which is the earlier deadline for admission, which has an earlier deadline for the financial aid forms, I recommend early action if a student can get it done, because you're done earlier. It shows you're interested in that school, and merit aid is given out to kids that are deserving as they come in. And so the earlier you get it in, the better. Doesn't mean you won't get merit aid if you apply regular decision. But a lot of colleges look heavily on early decision, which you didn't ask about, and then on early action as well. Would you please advise how to evaluate a house value? So I just answered that. You mentioned to use IRS quick sale. Would you please provide more detail? So basically I put a calculator in there. You've got to find, there's no, try the federal calculator that I put in the chat. And then you need to look at your house and look at different sources. Typically the tax assessed value, if that's just absurdly low, like if you know your house will sell for $1 million and your tax value is 600,000, well, that's great for your property tax, but heard that your house would sell for that, then you have to decide what is the lowest reasonable home value and then take off that 15 or 20%. That will be your market value, and then your mortgages will come off after that. Our family has a 30% tuition benefit through our employer. That's awesome. Awesome. That's great, Ben. How do you disclose this on the CSS profile, which asks for that will vary by school based on the tuition at each? Yeah, you got to do your best. So when you say 30% tuition benefit, I guess what you're saying is your employer will cover 30% of, I'm just making this up at this point, but 30% of tuition at any school. So you know what I would do? And if that's, I believe that's a required question, so you do have to answer it. If it's not, don't answer it. What I would do is I would take the school that's got the lowest tuition on your child's list. I would do 30% and I would put that there. Don't overestimate, because what if your child doesn't get into any of the more expensive schools? Because they're going to take that into account as money that you have coming in. But if that's guaranteed and you definitely have that benefit, that's how I would do it. I'd go with the lowest school on the list and do the math on it. And that's the amount I would put there. Hi, Peg. I was working in 2021, but I am not now. I have an older child who is an adult residential therapeutic program, expecting to spend more than 100,000. Can we ask for both of these factors to be taken into account in calculating need? Absolutely. So what you're going to do is you're going to submit the FAFSA, and if the CSS profile is part of it as well, with your 2021 numbers. Then once you get in, you're going to reach out. Once your child gets in, you're going to reach out and appeal, follow their appeal process, and tune into our appeal webinars, because we are going to tell you exactly how to do this. And we're going to teach you guys how to interpret financial aid award letters, because no two are the same. So really be on the lookout for those when they come up. But yeah, you're going to want to reach out, and anything that's a strain on cash flow and having to cover this cost for your only child is a huge thing that you're going to want to let them know. And they might want documentation, and you provide whatever they want, but that's what you do. But if you are submitting the CSS profile, do not put that in the special circumstances area. Submit the form, your child gets in, you get the award, and then you approach them with all this information. Because if you put it on the form, you've lost all of your appeal points, because if you reach out to them, they might say, well, we took all that into account. Don't tell them, get a package, and then you reach out. But yes, absolutely, you want to be sharing. This is not a time to be shy about your finances. If your situation is worse now than the year you're reporting on, you're always going to want to appeal. That's a very valid reason to appeal. And all the schools do appeals a little differently, right? So you have to find out what their process is. Okay, we got 3 questions here. If these are fast, because I just want to be able to try and answer as many as I can for everybody. Does it matter which parent is the financial aid parent 1 versus 2? For example, and this is for the FAFSA, should the one with the lower income be parent 1? That doesn't matter. If you're married, it doesn't matter who's parent 1 and parent 2. Just make sure you remember, because you're going to have to put in earnings for each one. But now your adjusted gross income comes together. If you're married, that doesn't matter. Confirming that student bank accounts linked to one parent account get listed as a parent versus student. If you have an account and you're on it and your child's on it, you should split it 50%, because you're both on it. That's how that works. And then for student financials, are we also providing 2021? Yes, it's all 2021. And does weekly allowance, for example, count as untaxed student income? No. Yeah. I'm very honest with the capital H. I have Matt, who a lot of you guys know. Sometimes he calls me a prude with my honesty, but no, you don't have to put allowance down. This is more like if babysitting money, that kind of stuff, that maybe your child didn't get a W-2. But I love your honesty, Abby, and I think that's a lovely question. So, but now, okay, where is the best place? Although I will say, Abby, like if a grandparent is giving your child $1,000 a month, then yeah, that's outside help. But allowance, like I remember it when my kids were younger, no. Okay, where is the best place to put the current value of my 401k? In the parent retirement part of the employment section or the asset section? So first of all, your 401k does not go anywhere on the FAFSA. Okay, they're going to ask the net worth of your investments for the parents and the student. That's only non-retirement money. So it has no home on the FAFSA. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make, and it shoots up your EFC. So that's not on there at all. For the CSS profile, which I don't know if you're asking about that as well, which really burns me up, but I won't go into my soapbox on it. They do have a required question this year that says, what is the balance in your retirement accounts? And it is a required question. So on the CSS, under the parent asset section, that question does come up. For home value on the CSS, can we use Zillow less 20% or the calculator from your link? Yeah. What if Zillow values less? Use the lowest defensible, meaning, honest. It's not crazy and it's not accurate. If it's Zillow, if it's Redfin, if it's wherever you get it, that's what you want to use, and then you take off the 20%. And remember, that's an appeal point. Like how did you value my home and how much are you putting in the equation? I had a family last year. We were on the phone with financial aid, and I said, how much of their equity are you including in the EFC? And it was this huge percentage. And I said to the financial aid administrator, I said, well, no bank's going to allow them to access that much equity. And she said, yeah, you're right. So she went in and fixed it. I'm not saying that'll always happen, but that's a conversation point with the colleges. What's the timeline for sending the first batch of 10 and then being able to add more? We're still exploring. So what she's referencing is on the FAFSA, you can submit up to 10 schools at once. So submit your 10. It usually takes about 3 to 5 days to process. What'll happen is, what'll hit up in your child's FAFSA is called a student aid report, SAR. And once you see that, that's a pretty good indication that the FAFSA has completely processed. When you submit the FAFSA, print to PDF or print, if you like to have paper, print that confirmation page that you see next, because it lists all the schools that you submitted it to. It lists the confirmation number. It tells you your EFC. So definitely keep that. So in case the school comes back and says, we never got it and you missed a deadline, you've got it. But yeah, that's, and remember, the schools all have their own priority financial aid form deadlines, and it's dependent on the way that you apply for admission. So if you apply early decision, you're going to have for admission, you're going to have an earlier financial aid deadline. Same thing with early action. And those could be coming up on November 1st. There's some deadlines for financial aid forms, and you don't want to miss deadlines because then the college can give you less money. So you want to if you're submitting more than 10, look at the deadlines and make sure that you're leaving enough time. And if you have some that the deadline's December 1, that should be in the second batch, right? Because you don't want to miss deadlines. On the CSS form, it asks retirement account value. What do I put there? And that's what I just mentioned. I know what I would do, and I really can't share that because that's what I would personally do. It really bothers me that they're asking this question and they're requiring it, because in the past it wasn't required. And I always told people it's not part of the calculation. So do not disclose it because it's not required. Now they've made it required. It's not part of the calculation, but if you have a nice big balance in your 401k, don't kid yourself. The colleges are looking at that and saying, well, mom or dad or mom and mom are really well prepared for retirement and package. My part line here is less is more, and be honest. the question is required, so you have to decide what you want to do there, but it is a required question. So I'm never going to suggest that people lie. I mean, it's fraud, right? So that's my take on that. I really would like to have a conversation with College Board about it because it really burns me up, but that is what it is right now. I have been in the process of divorce since 2018. I filed my taxes separately from my son's father for the last 5 years, and all our joint assets are contested. I can't sell or do anything with any of them until the divorce is final. I would not report those assets. They are contested assets. They are not available to you to pay for college. So that's ridiculous. You should not be putting those down. If it was done and you had this and that, then put them down. I would not put them. And if you get questioned on it based on what's on your tax return, I would just be honest and say, I cannot access these. So they are not available for college right now. So I wouldn't put them on there. I also have a temporary court order for a lump sum child support and alimony. How do I separate child support from that for the FAFSA? I don't know how you break that out. Maybe the courts can break that out for you, because I can't, I don't really know. And you do want to break that out. You do want to break that out. So you want to get to somebody, if it's a judge or somebody in the courts, or I haven't been divorced. So I can't give any more help than that, but I would definitely seek professional help to get that breakdown. For college students, if they put their earnings into the IRA account, would this portion of fund be excluded from student assets? Yes. If a student has $5,000 and puts it in a Roth IRA, then it's in a retirement account. If it's in a retirement account, when you're submitting the forms, that's not part of net worth of investments. If they need that money to pay for college in some way, be careful, because you can't pull money out of retirement accounts without penalties and tax. So be careful with that. If your child puts money into a deductible IRA and files a tax return, and that money comes off of what they owe, just like adults could do. If your income is at a certain level, you can put money in an IRA and it's a tax deduction. That is considered untaxed income. So there's two, not to confuse you, there's kind of two buckets here. There's an income bucket and there's an asset bucket. So in answer to your question, it's in a retirement account, not disclosed. And on the CSS, they ask if the student has a retirement accounts, and it's not a required question. So don't click yes or no, just leave it, right? Don't click either box, just leave it, because it's not required. And it doesn't even come up on the FAFSA. But if they're filing a return and they're getting pre-tax, they're getting a tax deduction, that's going to show up on the income side. The forms are going to ask if they got a deduction. A lot of kids are not doing that. They're not doing that. Most kids I know set up Roth accounts because they don't really have, they're in a low or zero tax bracket. So they're usually setting up Roths, and that is a way to put the money. And not to get too in the weeds, you can take contributions from a Roth out to pay for college as well. But there are tax ramifications to that. So just keep that in mind. But in answer to your question, if it's in a Roth IRA, it's not disclosed. Is the 2021 economic impact payments need to be reported? Hold on, I'm just gonna drink a water here. I would need a little bit more information, because I know that some of those do show up on the tax return. So if they're showing up on the tax return, they are going to be reported. That's another appeal item. Like people with businesses and got PPP or got certain payments, if that was something that was given to you when times were really hard, which is what all this is, and it's spent, even if it does need to be reported, that's an appeal item to reach out to the colleges as well. Can a parent have their own account for College Aid Pro, or is it under one of the students? No, the parent can go and set up an account. You use your password use your email and set up a password, but then you want to think of it for one child. Like if you have twins, you probably want to have two of them, because your kids will have different SATs and ACTs and GPAs. So for merit aid projections, you would want to have two, but no, it's not like the FAFSA where you have to set it up under your student. Most people have one child that they're kind of planning for. So when we ask for the student name, you put in the student, but you can use, this is just all for your planning. It's in no way linked to the financial aid forms. It's just to help you see your EFCs and plan around affordability. If I don't expect to qualify for any financial aid, should I still fill out the FAFSA? Seems safer to fill out JIC circumstances, change at home, but is there any reason not to in terms of admissions merit? Okay, I'm not totally JIC circumstances. I don't know what that means. I don't know if you know what, Jenny, if you could just pop that in the chat, what you mean by JIC circumstances, you can just write it to me. Because there's so many questions, I'd have to scroll to the bottom to see it. So I'm not really sure what you mean by that. But if we recommend everybody submit the FAFSA, there's a lot of reasons, and I go through this every year with parents. But one, some colleges require it on file to give merit aid, which is the non-need-based aid. So if you don't want to leave money on the table and you don't want to call every school and check and make sure you're talking to somebody who knows what they're talking about, just submit the FAFSA. There's student loans, there's federal direct student loans that a lot of families want to take advantage of. Honestly, in the last couple of years, the interest rate was so low that I was counseling parents, you can make way more money in your portfolio. You might as well take out these loans and keep the money in the market. Now the market's a little bit different and interest rates have gone up, but there's just a lot of reasons to submit the FAFSA, a lot. If you're appealing and you didn't submit the FAFSA and you didn't take loans, some schools will say, well, how hard up could the family be? So I hands down recommend that you submit the FAFSA for sure. Again, I'm not totally sure what the second half of your question is. Some people get concerned if they have a low EFC, that's going to affect admission. If you need financial aid, submit the financial aid forms. If the college doesn't want to accept your child because of it, which most schools could potentially look at it, but they're not just accepting kids that are all full pay. They're not. That's just not how it works. So that's my take on that. I wouldn't lose a minute of sleep over that. I know there's a lot to stress about in this process. Here's a FAFSA question. My husband is self-employed and his company is an LLC. Does this count as a family business? Wasn't sure if there's a specific IRS definition. So to be a family business, it has to be at least 51% family owned. So if there's 3 partners and your husband's one and they're 2 of his college buddies, then it's not a family business, but that's the first piece. And it has to have under 100 full-time employees. He does not have any. So if he's the sole owner, then it is a family business. And the value of that business, not the income that comes off it, but the value, the resale value of that business, if it has a resale value, is not included on the FAFSA. They ask about businesses and it very clearly says that. That is going to go away next year. That small business exclusion has been around forever, but the FAFSA Simplification Act did away with it. So that is going to go away. I'm just jotting because they always ask me what questions I'm answering. I could not create FAFSA ID. The system kept saying I already have a FAFSA ID. I was a student before, but I'm filling for my son now. Because the FSA ID is relatively new. It hasn't been around forever. If you continue to have problems, I would call the FAFSA helpline. So just Google FAFSA helpline. It's an 800 number, and then you can give them your information. If you have, you need to set one up for your son or have your son set it up under his social security and birth date, and then you need to set one up. So they're 2 different ones. So if you already have one in the system, and it might be if you're trying to create one and you never created one, if the ID that you put in somebody else has already used, you're going to have to just keep going through. Like if I put PK Keo and then they say, oh, that ID is already used, and I'd have to say PK Keo 81 and see if that's used. So maybe that's what's happening, that you're trying to create it and the IDs that you're coming up with have already been used. But if that's not the case, I'd call the FAFSA helpline, because if you're not able to get that set up, you're not going to be able to submit the FAFSA and e-sign. So I would just give them a call. And if you feel like they don't know, ask to speak to a supervisor. How strict will college hold you to ED if financing is not what you need? Specifically, I need the FAFSA, and the EFC that came up is doable for my family, but I've read that the EFC and what schools offer don't match, and that more often than not are higher. If it is simple as me stating that we cannot afford that the EFC is my max, and I see no issues with ED, but if they hold me to the full amount. So basically, if you're going to have your child submit an application early decision, in my opinion, you got to do your homework. So it's not just looking at a general EFC calculator, especially if you're looking at CSS profile schools. So if you have a MyCap account, you're going to see, and I'll do a screen share here, you're going to see EFCs along the top. Okay. You're going to see institutional and consensus. Those are EFCs that are tied to the CSS profile schools. There can be swings in this institutional EFC. This is an average of $10,000, potentially $15,000, depending on home equity. So in my opinion, if you're going to go the early decision route, you should know very clearly if you can afford that school. And you could talk to the school about I used to do this years ago. They called them early reads, and they would actually look at you and look at the family and say, this is what we might award. So you are signing a contract, and the counselor is involved when you apply early decision. So you don't want to do that lightly. You really want to make sure you can afford the school before you apply that way. Okay. All right. Let's see here. I did not submit the FAFSA, and it stated that my son was chosen for verification. Thank you for your assistance. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So verification is what happens after you submit the FAFSA. So this must be something else. I don't know what it is. Oh, I did submit the FAFSA. Oh, I'm sorry. I read your question wrong. And it said that my son. So yeah. Oh, you're just giving me backup. Okay, thank you. I thought you were saying not. And I'm like, I have no idea what that is then. Okay, how do I enter the market value of the rental property? So it's the same thing. Same thing. If you have a rental property, if it's not in a business, if it's in a business and it's a small business with less than 100 full-time employees, that's the value of your business, the property. And you on the FAFSA, you may be able to not disclose it if it's in a business, but if it's not in a business, it's the same thing as your home. Find the lowest defensible value, and rental properties typically sell for less because you disclose that it's a rental property. And the assumption is that maybe it wasn't, renters don't take care of homes as well as the homeowners do, right? That's the assumption. So again, the lowest honest defensible value, and then knock off the 15 or 20%, similar to your primary home. Hi, Peg. My main question is around how to report an educational trust fund on the FAFSA. So if the student is the beneficiary of a trust, there's a specific question that asks that. So if it's an educational trust, I'm assuming that means it was set up for this student's education. So on the FAFSA, that's just part of the assets of the student. If it's set up in such a way that the funds aren't accessible, that's definitely something to reach out on appeal, but usually educational trusts are set up for that purpose. So that is going to affect the EFC. On the CSS profile, they ask the question, and then they actually ask what kind of trust it is and everything. So if it's a trust that like a grandparent set up for 5 grandkids, definitely only disclose the value for this student, not the value of the entire account. Same thing with everything, with businesses. If you have 3 partners, you don't disclose the full value. It would be your share of it. Okay, do all schools ask for CSS? Absolutely not. The CSS profile is only required for less than 300, mostly private, but there's a few public schools. So if you look, College Board has a list. If you Google CSS profile participating schools, you'll see a list of, here, I'll go in here real quick. I'll show you guys. If you go, I got to move all my Zoom stuff here. I'll open up a new tab. All right, if you do CSS profile participating schools, did I spell everything right there? Yeah, so you go into here and then you get a list here. And this is nice. The college's website is the final say on this though, right? This is College Board that I can't say that they're always updating it, but it's a nice place to start. Also in MyCap, we tell you, and this you can count on, like if you go into Northwestern, you click on more info, go in here, you click on financial aid, it says consensus. That's the methodology they use, and consensus and institutional require the CSS profile. So all that information is available to you in your MyCap account. So you set up a free MyCap account, and then you don't have to go hunting and looking out all over the place. Now let's go back to questions here. All right. How close in dollars to assets need to be reported? I mean, the rule of thumb is it's the day you hit submit. I don't know that all parents even have the ability to see their portfolio like I do because I'm a financial planner. So I have everything linked so I can see close of business. I think a lot of people probably look at the last statement. And you just want to be honest, right? If you don't have the ability to look up your portfolio that day, then just do your best to estimate your assets, but you don't want to overestimate, right? So make sure you're not overestimating. If we know our son won't qualify for financial aid because we're middle income, would you still recommend making an effort to lower our EFC? You can always look into strategies to lower your EFC. I mean, if the income, if you're in MyCap and you see a certain EFC and it's mostly driven by income and you've gotten some help or you understand enough about it to understand that, if you're not going to quit your job, you know, income is what it is. There is some movement of assets sometimes, or spending down of assets, or paying off credit card debt with assets that are sitting there. It just, I mean, I don't know your situation. If I looked at it and it was like, wow, you have some opportunities to lower your EFC, we'll definitely do it. I can tell you because I don't know your family, your situation. Hi, I have twins. Awesome. Just like me. I've created my FAFSA account. Does CSS require parent account as well? It's under College Board. So basically you have twins. So you're going to be submitting 2 FAFSAs, and they're your kids' FAFSAs. They're not yours. So each one of your kids needs to get an FSA ID and password, and then you, or if married, your partner needs to get one. Just one parent needs to get it. Who's ever kind of, if you're married, whoever is kind of owning that piece. If you're divorced, it's the custodial parent where the kids have spent the most time. So that's how it works on the FAFSA. You're going to be submitting 8 FAFSAs, 2 each year, right? Your income numbers will all be the same. The kids' information could be different because they have different income and assets. With the CSS, you're going to be submitting a CSS profile with each one of your kids. So hopefully that answers your question. So you're not combining them. I've been unemployed during 2022. Should I include this under the special circumstances? My son is applying, or I would not. And I said this earlier, Robert, but maybe you weren't on yet. We recommend that you, on the CSS profile, you only include what's required. And the reason, and that's not required. So the reason is, if your child gets in early decision, then you reach out and appeal. And you say, oh, by the way, my current reality is a lot different than 2021. And I need you to, or I'm asking you to, let's have a conversation about recalculating and looking at my need. If you write a big appeal paragraph in the special circumstances, you've lost some leverage. So that's how I recommend you do it. You've mentioned to apply to competitive schools when applying to colleges. My son wants to go to University of Washington in Seattle. I know you're familiar with this one. Can you suggest what competitive schools he should apply to? So that one's a hard one because we usually, when we talk about that, we're usually talking about private schools. So, you know, Matt talks about, you know, Bentley and Stonehill up in Boston, and there's schools here like University of Portland and Willamette, like they compete for the same students. So that's what we would say. Oh, you don't want to go to Portland, you really want to go to Willamette? Well, apply to Portland. If you get a better merit award, we can use it when we help you appeal. University of Washington is a flagship, school in the state of Washington. And as you know, it's not easy to get into as a state student in state, even and out of state's even worse. So that sort of strategy, that doesn't really apply like in Indiana. You have IU and you have Purdue. They're different schools that offer different stuff. Like Wazoo, if your child gets into Wazoo, it's not like you can really use that as it. So UW is kind of hard to do that strategy with. I've been trying to see if there's something I can do with cash in the bank that won't be counted for the FAFSA and perhaps CSS. Ran the numbers and see whether there is 50K in the bank or zero. Seems like the estimator says the same result. I'm now wondering if the schools themselves might look at it differently. So basically, parent assets on the FAFSA, there's an asset protection allowance. It's very low. That comes off, and then the rest is assessed at approximately 5.64%. So I'm doing the exact math for you here. So that amount is $2,820. So if all of that's sitting there and you disclose all of that, that's how much your EFC will go up from that, minus the allowance. So probably a little less. On the CSS, parent assets are supposed to be assessed at 5%, and they actually have much more generous allowances that they pull off. If you have kids, they assume part of that money is saved for college, so they pull that off. The federal methodology is not generous with allowances, but the institutional, the CSS profile one is. So 50,000, like that's how it'll move the needle if it's in the parent's name. So that's kind of up to you if you want to move it around. The other thing you got to keep in mind is you're going to have to pay something for college. So if some of that money is needed and you spend it all down, then you're going and getting loans. So you might have gotten some aid by spending it down, maybe not, or it might be subsidized loans or work study, but then you don't have the money to pay the bills. And then you're going to have to go take it out of your home equity or other stuff. So you want to remember too, sometimes people get a bit crazed about getting rid of all of their money, but you got to realize you're going to need some to pay for college as well. Is it possible to submit the FAFSA one college at a time? Yeah, it is, but it's very laborious. I don't recommend doing that. I mean, you can submit the FAFSA 10 times if you want, but I don't know why you would want to do that. You can list up to 10 schools at a time. If another school pops up on, say your child applies to 8 schools, and then a couple of weeks later, a couple more schools come on your radar, yeah, go ahead and make sure it processed, delete them, and resubmit. The next question, can you submit the CSS to more than 10 at a time? Yeah, the CSS, you can submit, to all the schools at once. You're going to pay on the CSS. There's a $9 registration fee, and then each school is $16. So you're going to pay to submit there. But yeah, it's an unlimited number of schools. If this is a new thing on the CSS, which is actually a good thing. If your adjusted gross income is 100,000 or lower, the fees to send the CSS will actually be waived, which is nice. So you'll get a little pop-up that tells you that. Also, if you're on Medicaid or those different boxes, if you click any of those, it'll be as well. But yeah, I don't know why you would want to submit the FAFSA one at a time. Plus, remember those deadlines. You're going to have to submit it, wait for the process, go back in. So you don't want to miss deadlines. If you begin the FAFSA and input investment amounts and you don't finish it until a week later, do you need to update the numbers? You guys are very specific. Technically, it's supposed to be the value of your assets the day you hit submit. So if you started, you put 50,000, the market just goes nuts, and now it's worth 56,000. Technically, you should go change that. Also, on the flip side, if the market drops, like I said earlier, you might want to check that the way the market's been. I mean, technically, that's the rule. It's supposed to be the day you hit submit. I don't know how many people are that exacting about it, but that's the rule. Okay, we've got about 6 minutes, so let me see how many more I can get done here. For schools who require the CSS profile, do they require the FAFSA? Yes, the FAFSA is required for almost every school in the country. There's only about a little less than 300, mostly private, a few public like Michigan, William & Mary, UVA, UNC, Chapel Hill. that require the CSS. So it's not in lieu of the FAFSA, it's in addition to the FAFSA. And remember, if you go into College Aid Pro, set up your free account. If you have not done this, all this information is at your fingertips. You go into UCLA, you click on more information, you go down to financial aid, it says FAFSA. So you know, all I need to do is submit the FAFSA for UCLA. You got all the information right there at your fingertips. Okay. Okay, let's get rid of that one. We live in Illinois, but are applying to UC schools. This might be relating to that other question. You got to check with the state of Illinois. My guess is you're not going to get Illinois state aid to go to a UC school. And just so you know, UC schools tend to not be generous, and we will show this in MyCap. Even if you have need, your EFC is not super low. Don't look for a lot of need-based aid from UC schools. The UC schools tend to be expensive for out-of-state kids, just in general. But you need to check with your state on that. Do I list the total private loan amount still owed on the CSS minus already dispersed amount? So that's not a required question about your loans. So I would recommend you leave it blank and then go ahead and reach out about any loans you have to the college on appeal. That's what I would recommend. But yeah, I wouldn't list the total amount. If you have debt, I would list the debt you currently have, but I would recommend you leave that blank. MyCap member here, awesome. I'm a teacher with 2 related questions. Do I report involuntary pension withdrawals? Nope, and that's a great question. You have to pre-tax retirement contributions that are voluntary need to be disclosed on both the CSS and the FAFSA. But if like this person who wrote in to teacher have no choice, you have to save, then you don't disclose that. So that's nice. Do I report the value of the account held by the state, or is the state pension not reported? If it's your pension, if you have a pension, that's part of retirement, right? So you don't disclose that. That's a retirement account. And also you never disclose matches that you get from an employer. That's not part of this process. Okay. All right. Okay, so my teen recently had a legal name change, so all the docs have her old name on them. How would you navigate this with schools that require the iDoc to upload? Well, there is a question on the CSS that talks about ask for your social security number. And I've always said, don't disclose that because it's not required and it's highly confidential. I had a colleague share with me that there are some schools that track the student by that. So in your situation, I would actually call the school and tell them what the deal is and say, what's the best way to navigate this so that you're putting an application with all the docs. Just ask them, because this has got to have come up at different times in the past. We were able to change both name and social security card before any application. So yeah, I would just call the school. You don't have to give your name, just anonymously ask like, hey, this is a scenario. What do you recommend when we're doing iDoc to make sure that everything lines up and they get packed together? I would just ask those schools, and you don't have to give your name. I'm in lane to buy a car, wait time around 4 months. Do I include this amount? Okay, so this is a judgment call for you. And big disclosure, if the money is in the account, you are supposed to disclose it. So if the money is spent, and I've said, I'm a very honest person, but if I know that money is being spent and I basically it's spent and I have documentation that I am buying this car for this amount, I would feel comfortable that I'm being honest and not disclose it. The rules are it's supposed to be disclosed. If you have documentation that you've spent it, then you're being honest. You know, that money is basically spent. We just have supply chain issues and it takes a while to get cars now. So I would feel okay. It's up to you what your sleep is, you know, on that. Okay. Okay. Hi, Chris. How is the best way to answer CSS PAT for students starting with the breadwinner going to retire this year? I see under parent income review section, expect change. Also, what needs to be reported? Yeah, on the CSS, they ask for what's going to happen in 2022. What do you expect for 2023? Those are required. So basically be honest and lowball it. If you don't know, put 0, especially for your kids. Like if your kid doesn't have a job, put 0 because you don't know what they're going to make. You're going to submit these forms with 2021 figures. And as I said earlier, you should reach out to them, which will probably be in 2023. I've seen colleges on appeal say, okay, you're appealing 2021, let's see 2022. And 2022 in your example isn't going to be different because the person is just, the breadwinner is just retiring at the end of this year. It's a conversation with the college and be persistent. I know my 2022 still looks good. I am retired. Here's proof of retirement. And you go from there. And you've got all this stuff written here about stuff you're going to take out. Some of these questions, like you probably want to talk to somebody to understand the best way to appeal to these colleges. Okay. All right. It is 5:01. So I'm going to do one more question here. All right. Do we need to submit one FAFSA application for all UC colleges or need to submit? It's per college. You're going to have to search each college and submit the FAFSA for each UC school. And I said earlier, I don't know if you're a California resident, but UC schools can be very expensive for out-of-state kids. So definitely do your homework and don't expect a lot of merit aid or a lot of need-based aid, depending on your family, from these UC schools. And they're big price tags if you're an out-of-state kid. So I will do one more question. Yeah, there's another one about the home. I already covered the home, guys. The calculator minus quick sale value 20%. Okay. I have a junior graduate. Okay, this is my last one because I do have to go here. I have a junior graduating spring 2024. When should I complete the FAFSA? If I sold an investment property in 2022, will this increase my EFC my kid's freshman year? Yeah, you're going to have to report your income for 2022. So if you sold an investment property, that's going to show up as however it shows up on your tax return. You can appeal to the college and explain stuff, but it is what it is, right? It's going to be on your tax return. You can always appeal and explain things. Also, if you're sitting on a chunk of money when you submit the FAFSA and the CSS profile, it's going to hit you in both places. It's going to hit you on the tax return, and it's also going to hit you that you have assets. So I know I couldn't get to all of these, but I really encourage you guys, if you haven't set up a MyCap account, definitely set up a MyCap account, do your homework. I will put the link here in chat again. Get that set up. You can book hours with our experts when you need them for review of financial aid forms. If you are just completely overwhelmed and you're like, I don't have time to deal with this, and I need somebody who knows their way around this, we also have another option called Wake Me When It's Over. It's basically a concierge service where you have a dedicated college planning expert from CAP, unlimited emails. We walk you through each step. You give us all your information. We get the forms ready. You hit submit. When appeals come, we're writing appeal letters with you. We're recommending, somebody asked earlier, competitive colleges to apply. All the way through, you're basically dropping them off at the door, all the way through. So we're here to meet you. We got the free option, we got the webinars, we got the office hours. You need an hour here or there, book it through the software. Great experts. We have a guy who's in financial aid at MIT who loves working with families and does this on the side. So we are offering the resources, free resources, paid resources. So definitely take advantage of it and be on the lookout in your email, because we are going to be doing line by line. You know what? I want to give you guys this link. So I'm going to go get it really quick. So give me a second here. I just have to log back into the Zoom account. I'm going to give you the registration link for this free webinar, because if you haven't submitted the forms yet, we're basically going to walk you through it. I've already done one, and I know these forms can be super stressful. So I apologize. I should have had this all up for you guys. because it's really relevant. So I'll give you the date. It is on October 27th. Yeah, it's on October 27th at 8 o'clock Eastern. So let me grab the link for you. I'm going to just go into the webinar here and grab it. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm almost there. I'm going to make a special link for office hours just for you guys. Okay, so here's the link to register. Oh, I still got a bunch of you here. Good. Okay, here's the Zoom registration link. So we'll be going through. So click on that. That'll open another window. You can sign up for next Thursday. I think that's a Thursday. Next Thursday night. We'll do line by line, watch your deadlines. If you got a deadline November 1, then you're going to want to jump on and get it done right away in case, I never wait till the night before because you never know what's going to happen. So hope this was helpful. We covered a lot of stuff. And we'll see you next time. We'll see you in MyCap, and everybody have a great evening. Take care.